Hey guys, Otaku here, back with another deck profile, and probably the most, I guess, uninteresting deck profile to 99% of the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Today we're doing Spright Runick, one of the most generic decks we've been seeing for like the last, I don't know, year and a half. But I just recently played it. I know earlier I did a Spright Plunder profile, or not Spright Plunder, Runick Plunder profile. And I realized I had all the Spright monsters as well, the whole Spright core -2, but we'll get to that later. So I was just like, you know what, I'm going to try Spright Runick before one of the archetypes gets hit again on the next ban list in like September or something. So yeah, I gave it a try. Absolutely loved this deck. There's some things I build a little different in this deck than some other Spright Runick players. I took it to locals, a case tournament this past weekend. Out of I believe it was like 23 people or something like that, I got 7th. So I mean, not terrible. Didn't top by any means. I guess I got top 8, but the prize was top 4. So yeah, definitely had a lot of fun with this, and we're just gonna jump right into the main deck. So for the main deck, we have, just the 2 fountains because it got hit on the ban list to 2, but, everyone was only running 2 to begin with. 3 Runick Tip, 3 Freezing Curses, 3 Destruction, 3 Flashing Fire, 2 Dispelling, and 3 of the Slumber. This is what everyone runs, pretty much. Some people run Smithing Storm, some people run a 3rd Dispelling. I think 2 Dispelling is all you really need. It's a good card. It's kind of like, in a weird way, a draw. You activate a resolution of them drawing or adding a card, and then you make them discard. Sometimes you hit the card that they add, which obviously that's really good if you hit the card they fucking wanted. And that did come up in this past weekend. I was playing as Sword Soul player. He activated Emergence, added Taya, activated this. I ended up hitting Taya and making him discard it, and he didn't have a lot of plays to make after that, so that was actually really good. But so yeah, that is that's just the standard Runick spell card ratios. I also do want to apologize for my voice if it sounds like a little raspy or whatever. I think I'm coming down with a cold, just saying. But regardless, the show must go on. So moving on to the sprites, we have 3 Spright Blue, 3 Spright Jet. Some people run 2 Jet. I think 3 is perfectly fine. Just having the ability to still get into that Spright core if you don't open blue or starter or something. Just an extra extender to get into there, get starter, go for blue, and then maybe get like a red or something. But at the end of the day, if you want to run 2, that works perfectly fine. 2 Spright Reds and 1 Spright Carrot. Some people only run 1 red. I run 2 just because I think that extra monster to gate is a lot more valuable now. Spright monsters don't really have a way of recycling themselves out of the grave. So once they hit the grave, they're pretty much just gone for the rest of the duel. So once the 1 Spright Red is gone, you don't have that accessibility anymore, especially now that Elf is banned. So I thought the second Elf was really good. You can maybe go for a second Carrot instead of a second Red. It just really depends on, what you think your matchups are going to be. Are you going to go for a more spell trap, negate heavy? Because, the deck already has a lot of monster negates as it is with Jin Buster. But I thought 2 Reds was really good and honestly necessary, personally. We, of course, also have the 2 Spright Starters because it got semi-limited on the ban list. We got 1 Spright Smasher and 1 Spright Double Crossing. Spright Smasher, absolutely phenomenal card. Just being able to banish out of your graveyard, banish on your field, and then banish a monster on your opponent's board is really good. It's a 2-for-1, but realistically, again, the Spright monsters, you really don't get them out of the grave anymore because Spright Elf is banned. So being able to just banish 1 from the grave, and it's really a 1-for-1 at the end of the day. Because, again, from the grave, you're not going to be able to recycle them from the graveyard anymore, really. Spright Double Crossing is insane. All you have to do is have a rank 2 Xyz monster on the board. That could be Jin Buster, that could be Gigantic, that could be any other Spright rank 2 card you run in this deck. Target a card on your opponent's board and attach it to yours. It's really good. I'd rarely use the other 2 effects where it's like take control of an opponent's monster or monster in their graveyard, etc. I mainly use it to attach a monster to my Xyz monster, mainly just to get it off the board. This came up actually against another Sword Soul player. I had two of my wins this past weekend were Sword Soul players. Opponent had a Baron on board. I baited out the negate. I had a Gigantic on board, and they had a Baron and a Mo Ye. Gigantic obviously can't swing over any of those because he didn't have a extra deck monster as material. So I set Spright Double Crossing on my opponent's turn in draw phase, activated this, so when the standby Baron couldn't bounce himself. But I activated Spright Double Crossing, targeted the Baron, attached Baron to Gigantic, and now Gigantic was 3200 attack. It was absolutely clutch. This thing is actually crazy. Do not discredit this card if you are a Spright player. This card is insane. Some people side deck it. I think main decking both of these is really good. It's really up to you. I just had the room in the deck, so moving on. So we run no hand traps in the deck, mainly because essentially the Runick cards are hand traps. But we do main deck 3 Lava Golems. I mean, there's really no harm in main decking this. If you open it going first, you can discard it off the Hugin effect. But this deck does well going first or second, just as the main deck. The side deck is like is more for specific situations. But this deck just without siding can go first or second. It's really good. But the Lava Golem's really there just because you got decks like Pearly and shit where they're summoning probably up at least 2 monsters on board. So Lava Goleming to get like the Noir off board, or to get Cashier Risehard off board and a Fenrir, etc., etc. There's just a lot of utility in Lava Golem still. A single tribute Kaiju, I think, just doesn't do it right now. But Lava Golem is phenomenal. Also, you know, that standby phase, burn your opponent for it. But also, as we'll talk about when we get to the extra deck, I have ways to recycle this and make use of it. So we will certainly be going over that when we get there. As for the rest of the non-engine stuff, we do run the Nimble package. We do run 2 Angler and 3 Beaver. For the longest time, people are running 1 Angler and 2 Beavers. The issue with that is that if you open the Beaver and you activate the Beaver, or you normal the Beaver and you activate it to summon the other Beaver, immediately your Angler is dead. Now you can, if you open the Beaver, you can normal the Beaver, summon the Angler, and then you still have that use. You still have in the deck an Angler and 2 Beavers. But unfortunately, if you activate the Angler to get 2 Beavers, then you have an Angler, but then you still have an Angler and a Beaver that are playable, because if you open the Beaver, you can summon the Beaver to get the Angler. I think the 2-3 ratio is really good. I know by no means did I think of this. I know other people do this now, but I'm just saying I'm just more giving an example as to why people are doing this now. But because now it's a 5-card engine as opposed to a 3-card engine. As for the spice cards in the deck, we have Click and Echo. This card is phenomenal. If you're a Distant Coder watcher, I'm sure he's talked about this before. I had my eyes on this before I knew Distant Coder was talking about this. Not saying I thought of it. I'm just saying I didn't know how recently he's been talking about this card. But Click and Echo, it's a level 2, so it plays well with the sprites, just like every level 2 card in the game. You can summon it off Gigantic, but its effect is that it can't be used as fusion, synchro, or Xyz material. If it hits the graveyard because it was used as a link material, summon it to your opponent's board, and as long as it is on your opponent's board, your opponent must have his or her hand revealed to you. So you just summon this off Gigantic, link it off to make Sprend or IP or whatever, and then summon it to your opponent's board, and now you have hand knowledge, so you immediately know what to use your negates on. You know what to use Gin Buster or Red or Carrot, or your Runick cards. You know immediately how to negate your opponent's hand, how to stop your opponent from making a board. Obviously, this is a go first card, so you know you side it out if you're going second. But this card is absolutely insane. This card put in work this past weekend, and won me. I would argue this card won me a couple duels. Single-handedly won me a duel against Traptrix. So, yeah. And then the last two cards is Heavy Metal Foes Fusion. This is a weird card, but basically we don't use it for its first effect. Impossible to use it for its first effect. But its second effect is when it's in the graveyard, you can put it back, you can shuffle it back in the deck and draw a card. So it's discard fodder for Hugin, or if it gets in the graveyard by any means, we have that draw one. Just a really interesting, fun card. This card came up actually a couple of times and top decked me, evenly matched one of those times, so it was really good. So yeah. All right, so moving on to the extra deck, I do want to say I did have to borrow 2 extra deck cards from a buddy to make this deck actually runnable this past weekend. So I will be putting them on screen when I get to them, because I no longer have them in my possession. But just know that they are what I put in the deck at the time, so just keep that in mind. So we're going to start with our Runick stuff. We have 1 Hugin, 1 Munnin, 1 Gary, and the newly released Sleipnir. So honestly, the 1 Hugin is actually a cripple because when we summon it, eventually we do have to link it away to get Sprind or something, because it is in the extra monster dome. So it's used primarily just to get Fountain, and then it's a dead card for the rest of the duel, unfortunately. We don't have a second copy, so I don't run a second copy. If I did, I'd probably just take out the Munnin. But the Munnin actually did put in work this past weekend as well. 2k defense monster, and it gives me 1,000 life points at the end of every end phase. And honestly, Gary didn't do anything. Gary, I think, is still a must for this deck just because, you know, he is there to retrieve the Fountain if it hits the grave. He is there to pop a card if he gets destroyed by battle. Just overall, really needed card. Like I said, he didn't come up, but that's not to say he'll never come up. And then Sleipnir, this card's insane. Absolutely insane. The fact that nobody played around this card at my locals was insane. So for a couple examples on this when this came up. So first off, this card during your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, it's a quick effect. Target 1 card on your opponent's board, and this card, banish both of them until the end phase, so they come back. And then the second effect never came up, but if your opponent adds a card to their hand even during the draw phase, summon a Runick token. Again, that part never came up. But this card was just crazy. So during one of the Sword Soul players ended up top decking Lava Golem. They had a bunch of cards in grave, and they had a Qingying and a Chichao on board. So I Lava Golemed that, summoned out Sleipnir, and then I was just banishing away. I banished them both away when he went to attack with Lava Golem. On the end phase, Lava Golem comes back to your opponent's board, but because it's my monster, the game mechanics forget its proper summoning methods. So the Lava Golem came back to me. So I ended up being able to swing for 4,500 off the Sleipnir and the Lava Golem because I hadn't activated a Runick spell card in a hot minute. So ended up swinging for 45, and then time hit, and I actually won by life points on time. But I also did this a couple times with the Click and Echo. Again, Click and Echo doesn't know its proper how it's properly summoned, so it came back to my field, linked it away, put it back on my opponent's board, and then on the next turn, I banished it again, brought it back to my turn. Basically, I was recycling Click and Echo as a material for like Xyz summons and Link summons. It was pretty, or not Xyz summons, but just for Link summons. It was a really crazy strategy. This card is just crazy. If you're playing against Runick players, respect this card. The fact that it can just take take a card off the board until the end phase is very valuable. I do want to at some point add 1 Hugin to the deck, and if I was to add a Hugin, I would probably just cut them on in. We don't run a lure, and yes, that life point effect is valuable, but I think a second Hugin is a lot more valuable. So we're gonna move on to the Link monsters. All right, to start, one of the cards I borrowed from my buddy, I'm gonna show it on screen right about now, is Spright Sprind. I don't own a copy of Spright Sprind, unfortunately, but I did run one of him. He's still very good because you summon him. You summon him by linking away Click and Echo, which immediately means you get the Click and Echo effect. But then once you summon him, you can activate his effect to dump an angler, so you get 2 beavers. So immediately you have hand knowledge and 2 beavers on board to extend into further plays. But like I said, I didn't own a copy, so I borrowed it from a buddy. But I think Sprint's a must in this deck for sure. The rest of the Link 2s, we do have IP Masquerena, Akashic Magician, Donner, Dagger for Hire, and Dark, the Dark Charmer, Gloomy. I'm sure these are some weird ones. IP, I think, is a must. IP's going to move up. It's going to activate its effect to move into one of these or the next Link monster I will show. Donner is our Baguska out. Unfortunately, this did come up. My opponent did Baguska me. However, it was the Trap Tricks player, so when I summoned Donner, he just got Trap Tricks, Trap Hole, or Nightmare Trap Hole, or whatever that trap card is, got him off the board, unfortunately. So this came up, but it didn't successfully go through. But he is the Baguska out. Dark, this never came up, unfortunately, because the decks I faced that he would have come up were Earth decks and Light decks, or I guess realistically, Sword Souls are every attribute except Dark. So unfortunately, Dark never came up. But the idea here is you just use him to steal one of your opponent's monsters to either use it or use it as material for something else. Akashic Magician. The idea here is that for this effect is basically when you summon it, every monster that it points to is returned to the hand. You summon Lava Golem in one of those columns, or you summon Lava Golem in one of the arrow spots. Summon Akashic Magician, get the Lava Golem back, and maybe you can hit him again if they have more monsters on board. Just a really strong card. Like I said, this never came up. This did come up. Unfortunately, didn't go through. This came up twice, funny enough. I actually used this for the Click and Echo as well. It was pretty funny. No one expected this. Use this in Danger Dark World a lot as well. And then IP Masquerena is just a really good link to build up into the Link 3, Nightmare Unicorn. We don't do any Link 4s. So Nightmare Unicorn, just a really good card. Use IP and one other card on the board to do it. Discard a card, so you could be another Heavy Metal Foes Fusion or something. And bounce a card to their deck. And then also it can't be destroyed by card effects this turn. So just a really good card. But that is it for the links. The second card that I borrowed from a buddy was Gigantic Spright. I only own 1 copy, but I do run 2. So one Gigantic Spright isn't enough. Unfortunately, you make him to summon out 1 card, and then you most likely want to get the 3200 buff, so you'll probably make another one at some point in the duel, if not on the same turn. 3 Gigantic Spright is iffy, in my opinion. I don't think there's enough room in the extra deck for it, but he definitely needs to be at 2. Like I said, I only owned 1 copy, so I had to borrow the second one from a buddy. But yeah, just a really good card. Like I said, you just summon it, you activate his effect. The detach is not for cost, and you're able to summon out Click and Echo with this, or one of the other sprites if Click and Echo is either not available or not necessary. The only issue is that every player knows that Gigantic Spright is where the choke point is at. Thankfully enough, I was able to actually use this to bait out an Imperm against the Trap Tricks player, and it was not my choke point. I summoned out a blue and kept going. So, yeah. The rest of the Xyz monsters are Ani Bimaru Soul Sweeper, number 65 Gin Buster, and number 29 Mannequin Cat. Soul Sweeper, this came up a lot of times. I used this to get a card off my opponent's board until the end phase, and I swung for game a couple times. Funny enough, even though I'm playing Runick, I got a lot of battle phases this last tournament, because all I kept seeing was the Spright engine. Gin Busters is really good. Use Blue and Jet to make this because they're both dark, and then you just have a monster again on board. And then Mannequin Cat, this never came up. I'm actually going to cut it. And the monster I'm going to cut it for is Zeus. Funny enough, like I said, I got a lot of battle phases, and Zeus, if I had Zeus would have come up like 5 times this past weekend. The fact that I'm not running Zeus in a deck that runs Xyz monsters in general is just my bad, but the opportunity came up a lot. Mannequin Cat never came up, so I'm definitely cutting this card for sure. It's a good card for Spright. It just doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't come up enough. So yeah, we're definitely cutting the Mannequin Cat. But Ani Bimaru is really good. Like I said, just get a card off the board, and like I said, and also if it's basically just a sleep near, comes back on the end phase, but you're not banishing him as well. So, if you banish a Lava Golem or the Click and Echo, they're going to come back to your field when they come back on end phase. And then Gin Buster, like I said, it's just a really good card. But both of these also play into Spright Double Crossing, because Spright Double Crossing attaches to a rank 2 Xyz monster. So you just... Now, unfortunately, that doesn't do anything for Gin Buster, because you need to detach 2. But just, again, getting a card off your opponent's board, a monster off your opponent's board, and attaching it to Gin Buster, if necessary, is just a phenomenal strategy. But yeah, we're going to move on. All right, so I am going to talk about the side deck here, but do know, if you're a newer player at Yu-Gi-Oh! In deck profiles, the side deck doesn't really matter in deck profile videos, because realistically, the deck profile is more catered to what you're experiencing at your locals or what you're going to experience at a regional. It's more, I think the side deck is more of a personal preference. Yes, the side decks will have staple cards in them like Droll and Lockbird and stuff like that. But realistically, at the end of the day, it's up to you on what you think you're going to be running into at your locals, or what you're going to be running into at a regional, nationals, world championship, etc., etc. It's side deck is more of an opinionated thing more than anything. But my side deck was looking like this. We got 3 Dark Holes, 3 evenly matched. We have 3 Cosmic Cyclone and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, because Labyrinth can go fuck off. 1 Bestial Ball Drake, 1 Bestial Druce Worm, 2 Bestial Magnamoots, and a second Spright Double Crossing. Dark Hole, this came up 1,000 times this past weekend. There's just a lot of decks that just die to full board wipes. Sword Soul being one of them. Vanquish Soul. There's no point in Vanquish Soul tagging cards out and subbing them back in on Chain 2, because Dark Hole's going to kill whatever comes in regardless. Evenly matched, just the best board breaker in the game. Cosmic Cyclone, Harpy's Feather Duster, like I said, for those back row decks like Trap Tricks and specifically Labyrinth. The Bestials are simply for Branded. Because I play Branded, I still respect Branded. It's like a tier 2, tier 3 deck now, but the Puppet Lock, you still need to respect it. And I do experience the Puppet Lock players at my locals. So we do the Bestials for that, but also Bestials hit stuff like Labyrinth. You're able to banish. If you manage to get the monsters off the board, banish them so they don't come back. Just Bestials are, at the current moment, still incredibly powerful. And yeah, we do run 1 of each of the 3 good ones, other than Lubellion, of course. So yeah. And then the second Spright Double Crossing, this never came up. Honestly, probably going to cut it. Maybe for a second Smashers. I don't know. I had 1 flex spot in the side deck. Didn't really know what to put in it. And I thought a second Double Cross would be really good, just because it's a phenomenal card. But like I said, it never came up. But if we did put this in the deck and we put we activated this to attach 2 materials to Gin Buster, it is a hard once per turn. But if we activated this, put 2 materials on Gin Buster, we have a recycled Gin Buster. So that would be pretty crazy. But yeah, that is my Spright Runick deck profile. Like I said, it's about as generic as every other Spright Runick deck profile. It's a pretty cookie cutter deck. But Click and Echo, I think, and Heavy Metal Flows Fusion is kind of my little spin on things. I don't know. I haven't seen other Spright Runick players' deck profiles to know if they're running Click and Echo. But yeah. All right, so on to the final part of the deck profile video, of course, is the test hand. For anyone who has by no means seen the Spright/Runick combos, or just realistically to show how the deck performs, for anyone who hasn't seen the other deck profile videos, we, of course, make the assumption that we are going first, and we are assuming that our opponent has no interruptions to prevent us from playing. So, I mean, take what you see with a grain of salt, but this is realistically just to show how the deck performs and the lines. Runick, the issue with this is that if we start too much of the Runick line here, there's a good chance that the starting hand, or the test hand, is not going to do very much here, because as we know, Runick primarily plays on your opponent's turn. Doesn't do a whole lot on your own turn, but let's just jump into it. So of course, we draw 5 cards to start, and right off the right out the gate, we have pretty much access to the whole deck. So again, we would assume that they don't have any interruption, but in this scenario, I would probably still go for the Hugin. That way we can use Tip to search something else. So I would go for, Flashing Fire to summon out the Hugin. And then we go Hugin effect to discard the Nimble Angler. That way we can get the 2 beavers on the resolution of the chain. So again, this is assuming they don't have like Imperm or Ash to stop this. But Hugin will search out the fountain wherever it may be. 2 of in the deck, I know. There it is. Okay. So then on resolution, Nimble Angler will special out the 2 Nimble Beavers, which immediately gives us access to Gigantic. And the final Beaver. Go. We'd of course activate Fountain. Oh, we are not on screen here. We'd activate Fountain. Some of this is not going to be on screen, but that's okay. And then we would probably go Runick Tip, and we would search out Dispelling. The reason I search Dispelling, I only do this if I'm going first and I start Tip. I search Dispelling because 9 times out of 10 in Yu-Gi-Oh! At this point, your opponent's going to have something that can add something to their hand so it can hit them. Tip's going to allow us to hit them. So I would search Dispelling in this scenario. And then I would go for the Fountain to put Flashing Fire and Tip back onto the bottom of the deck and draw 2 cards. Just to hopefully give us some more access to the Spright engine of the deck. If not, of course, we'll probably draw into, some more Runick stuff. Oh, Freezing Curses and Lava Golem. Unfortunately, not super helpful, the Lava Golem, but that is okay. We would, of course, Xyz Summon into Gigantic here. And we would go Gigantic effect to summon out Click and Echo. Well, actually, no, I think we'd skip on the Click and Echo play simply because we don't have we've already gone the Angler play, so Sprint just doesn't help us here. Unfortunately, we could just link 2 into IP if we wanted, but I think going more into the Spright engine is a lot more necessary because we just didn't get access to a lot of it. So we'd go into blue. Because Gigantic activated his effect, our opponent can no longer nib us. But we'd go into blue, activate blue's effect to add Jet to hand. And then we would, because we control a rank 2 and a level 2, we can summon Jet effect. We already have Smashers in hand, so what we'd actually do, we can either go Double Crossing or go Starter. I'm going to do Starter, so that way we can still get either Carrot or Red. And what you go off of Starter is very dependent on if you know what your opponent's playing, so if this is like game 2 or 3. But I'd say more often than not, Red is the safer answer, which is why we run 2 of him in the deck, because there's just more monster effects nowadays than, spell and traps. So we'd summon out the Red, and then we would Xyz Summon again into our Djinn Buster, and we would of course set Smashers. So yeah, that is going to be like our end board. So we have a monster negate, we have Freezing Curses, Dispelling, and unfortunately the second Freezing Curses is not helpful there. We have Freezing Curses and Dispelling to break into the Runick Fountain line. We have Smashers to banish some stuff. This is gonna be a hard board to break. They would need most likely Dark Hole or something to really break it, but even then Hugin can save that to an extent. But yeah, that's really, honestly, that wasn't a bad test hand for sure. But yeah, that is it. I want to thank you all for watching. Let me know down below another deck profile you would like to see, and comment below what you thought of this one. And with that, I will see you all in the next video. See ya.